Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it might be for you. Thank you for joining us. My name is Todd Stroh-Snyder. I am the CEO and founder of a company called Tractus, where we specialize in working with small and mid-sized businesses, and where I have joined forces with Becky and a few others to really help organizations of the small and mid-size leverage learning technology and learning services and kind of help them be successful and get access to things that some of the bigger companies often do. So that's me. Becky, maybe give a quick intro on yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Todd. Been working with Todd for a couple of years. We both have a pretty good background in learning tech and small and medium businesses, as well as stints like a lot of us in enterprises. As I mentioned, I'm in the Las Vegas area, and I've been fooling around with learning and technology for over 20 years.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Well, it looks like we have people from all over California and Colorado and Florida, a couple other Texans, hopefully enjoying the weather here. A lot of talk about the weather. So I think we're ready for our winter, at least winter in the United States, to move on and get into the springtime. So let's go ahead and kick us off. Becky, if you want to move us to the next slide, I'll kind of give us a little bit of an agenda for what we're going to be discussing today.
Sure.
And really, what the title suggests is learning technology in small to mid-sized businesses. So, whether you're a big company or a small company, you're faced with some of the same, opportunities and challenges around finding talent and developing talent. And so what, we wanted to discuss with you is, some ways that we feel you can leverage existing tools and resources to deliver them to the small and mid-sized market. So most companies in the world are small and mid-sized. The very few are the actually enterprises that get a lot of the attention. So what we wanted to kind of focus on is a little bit around technology needs for the smaller companies that are out there. And regardless of, again, the size or location, the needs remain the same. That you need to find the right people, develop the right people, retain the right people, promote, move, the people in your organization. As you probably know too, if you're a small company yourself, you're probably growing. A lot of smaller organizations are growing at a faster pace than some of the bigger ones, and so the need to onboard and reskill and upskill talent is going to continue to be a big need, regardless if you are spread out over multiple countries or if you're just located in just one town. So that's just the opportunities that we can talk more about together today is what are some of the technologies out there, why are organizations using them, and then specifically how can they fit within the small and mid-sized market. There's one quote that I was going to read over here on the side of my screen is from the chief people officer at LinkedIn around switching careers, not switching companies. So we're all challenged right now with this great resignation or whatever you want to call it for people that are trying to find out what the right next opportunity is for them. And so we want to make sure that us as organizations provide people with the right opportunities at the right time so they can stay longer within the organization, that we don't lose talent and knowledge because we don't offer some of the opportunities for development that some of the bigger companies can have. So Becky, would you mind just maybe moving to the next slide, please? And so some of those business challenges, some of them listed here, and please add to this list if you can think of any more that I don't have listed on the screen. But the great resignation, like I mentioned, employee development, and with employee development, I think it becomes where most employees and most of us feel entitled to be developed in our career. We feel like when we join an organization, they should have some resources, some technology, some content available to help us develop, maybe mentoring, maybe coaching, etc. Employee engagement is extremely difficult with all the distractions we have, with all of the remote working, the virtual working, the Zooms and everything else. Even a conference like this can be a challenge. It can be hard to have engagement. Skill building is extremely difficult because skills change so fast. What we need one day is going to be different from what we need the next, and really being able to understand what skills we have in an organization and what skills we need. And then from there, what skills do people have, what level of skill, there's a lot of an improved need in that space. Building on the employee experience. So the employee experience isn't just, are they happy? Do they like coming to work? But, what, makes a place for them to come in and give their best? Do they give us a good recommendation, a good reference? Change and churn is always the name of the game. The change is faster, I think, ever than it's been before. And that's something that we're always going to be facing. And the speed of change, I think speed of changing skills, speed of changing organizations, the speed of the world, having different challenges as we kind of turn the corner. Looking at some of the chat notes, inflation and supply chain, that's something I think Janet put out there. You're right. The challenges some businesses have just around being able to have access to, products and resources and things that they maybe, were able to get before, or if they're just starting out, limited access to those types of things. So if you think of other things along the way, please continue to add to those. We want to have a good representation of what are some of the things that we're challenged with, and then let's also look on the positive side of what are some of the things we can do to help offset some of those challenges. All right,
Cool.
Becky, I'll move to the next one. I think.
Yeah. We get to be a part of a lot of high-level HR discussions and business discussions, and one of the things that we keep hearing over and over for the past year is talking about a people-centered strategy. I can say that word, right? We're all really trying to do something where we can keep all of our employees happy and productive, and we also want to be able to find a way that we can empower the people. We've seen over and over again for the past several years that digital technology really enables you to empower the people with the skills, and it delivers data that enables the organization to really respond to all of those challenges that Todd mentioned with agility and growth. So one of the quotes that I've always loved that Richard Branson has said years ago is, train people well enough so that they can leave, treat them well enough so that they don't want to. So with that in mind, it sounds really easy. So let's take a look at, from a small and medium business centered lens, let's take a look at learning technology and what happens there. You'll see on this particular slide up in the top left corner that there's a little red book there. I was lucky this December, I was the author of a tech guide to learning ecosystems. If you're a ATD member, you can get this for free. If not, you get to pay for it. But it's a book that basically talks about the learning ecosystem, the learning technology ecosystem. We developed a framework for that, and we talked about different ways that you can address looking at your ecosystem, which is a conglomeration of all sorts of different solutions, and how you can address that from your learning tech standpoint. So that framework that we developed talks about it in terms of 4 different areas. The first one is the one that we all kind of traditionally think about, and that's management. Management components of a learning tech ecosystem enable you to manage the learning and training, and typically it's the back end or administrative side. A learning platform, on the other hand, is typically something that is more experiential. LXPs and other pieces are in that particular group. Learning platforms allow for easy discovery, collaboration, management, and measurement of learning. So just a little bit more, we'll talk about those in a minute too. The other piece of the framework would be content. So content is in the learning ecosystem platforms can be a big and diverse mix of internally and externally curated content, and also includes all of the new third-party and not so new third-party content creators and resources that are available. Lastly, we have the point solutions. Point solutions are specific solutions that are digital, that address specific needs. So digital adoption platforms, different modalities like video and audio and VR and AR, and as well as learning record systems and talent marketplaces. These can all be digital, and it's all geared to what today's learner really wants. So the question is, for you who are looking at learning technology from a small and medium business standpoint, which pieces of this framework are most important to you, and how do you make a decision of which ones to bring into your organization? So let's talk a little bit about that. Basically, from our standpoint, learning technology just provides an opportunity. So the opportunity is is the tool. Learning technology obviously is software, but the technology is not the real issue here. The issue is learning as a strategy, bringing your learning together so that you think about it as a digital learning strategy that you implement by using the technology. So the strategies develop the four things that are listed on this slide. Blended solutions that have lots of different sources and lots of different creators. They can be third parties, they can be internal people, they can be any kind of different types of solution. It really, learning tech allows you to open up those solutions and those ideas so that they can be blended and work together. It also enables you to partner across teams and to map skills and to map gaps. From a leadership standpoint, from a business leadership standpoint, this is an interesting way of addressing how learning solves business challenges. Additionally, creating social learning within teams by involving influencers, leaders, and managers within the structure of people learning from others. That's one of the places that people really like to do. And making that social learning transparent, easy, and bringing together different teams and different groups of people to do things. All of that needs to be really easy to find and really easy to consume. And one of the reasons for that is these lovely mobile phones that we all have. Those have made it so that user experience and integration across platforms is really critical for all of us. And we think about all of that, tying it all together, and we tie it all together with data analytics and all sorts of data that can be pulled in and looked at in terms of how people are doing things. So, Todd, can you tell us a little bit about how the small and medium sized environment and ecosystem is perhaps just a little bit different?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that they're different in ways, but similar in others. And I think it's one of the key differences is probably just the less complexity and some of the levels of which companies go through to be able to find the right tech solutions. They can usually isolate a couple and then be able to effectively launch those fairly quickly. And there's a note here, just most of those companies we've worked with are often able to get something up and going quicker, just because they probably have less IT restrictions. They probably have fewer integrations required, fewer users to get set up. But all that to say, the tech really just helps enable some of the cultural and strategic learning initiatives of that organization. One being collaborative. A lot of us, are working together in ways we never have worked in the past, especially at a point where we may not be in the office next to someone before working on a project. We may not be in a conference room working with the team anymore. We find new ways to collaborate. And the learning technology really helps enable that. A lot of the companies that we've been talking with never thought they had the ability to hire people outside of a specific geography, just because of the way that they started in a local area, a small region, for example. And now the ability to collaborate with people from across the globe can really make a huge difference, and the technology helps to enable that for them. The influencers, so influencers in a small organization are sometimes more influential than some of those in a larger organization. In some of the big companies, there's a lot of C-level executives. There's a lot of people who are thought leaders or subject matter experts in the organization. In a smaller business, typically you have just a few key influencers that if you get them involved in the platform, involved in suggesting learning, helping engaging learners, helping to build out the platform in a way that's going to be relevant for that business, it's going to go a long way. And because it's a small organization, activity is a lot more visible. So those who actually are in the system doing certain things, leveraging the technology, are more visible. And so if you're in a role in the organization to be able to do that, people are paying attention to that as well. And then dynamic, that the growth and the flexibility that some of these smaller companies have is unique compared to some of those bigger organizations. They can typically pivot quicker if there's a new product available, if there's maybe a merger or acquisition, that they have the ability to leverage the technology and take advantage of some of the more dynamic ways that they are able to present content, bring in people onto the platform, etc. Let's see. Look at my notes real quick, Becky.
Yeah, Todd, one of the things we talked about on this one was the hybrid environment that we're all
Right.
experiencing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. And, hybrid is probably one of the new buzzwords. You probably hear a couple of those, through our presentation, because, these are things that we're all kind of facing right now in a different way. And I hinted at it already, but, thank you, Becky, for, kind of tying that together, because the way for us to actually be more effective in working in ways we've never worked before, working in locations we've never worked before, working with people we haven't worked with before, in this new hybrid world, whether or not we're in the office 1 or 2 days a week, whether we're only in our home office, we never leave that. The fact is, using technology, collaborating with others, helping, influence and providing a dynamic experience is going to go the farthest.
Great.
Anything else you want to add to that one, Becky, on the hybrid aspect?
No, I think that's great. It's everybody's experiencing it nowadays. It's and we're living it right now in this particular call.
And maybe as you say that, if you're out there on the chat, if you wouldn't mind maybe putting in there, if you are working in a hybrid model right now with your organization, what that's like, just maybe a quick little pulse check to see what people are doing, and if you feel like these are indicative of what you need to help you be successful in that new space, or if you want to add something else that you think may make sense for you as if you're in the small business market, that hybrid or kind of collaborative influence and dynamic would make sense for you. All right.
Cool.
Go to the next one for me, please, while people are hopefully going to type in a couple thoughts for us. Okay. Now, Becky shared with you, the differences in the different types of technologies, and really choosing a great platform that is shown to help do a few key things. And there are a few listed here. And again, as always, please add more to this list, because I know there are some that we're not including on here. And that's a platform that helps put microlearning and puts the building skills based on the microlearning content on the fast track. Again, you probably see a couple of those more buzzy words. Microlearning is one, but as someone who has been in L&D HR for over 20 years and really seeing the way people learn, whether you're in a big company or a small organization, microlearning is key. We don't digest content 8 hours at a time. Some of those workshops and experiences we go to are important for many reasons, but the way we can actually, I think, improve and build skills, and especially in this fast-paced world, is bite-sized. Get what you need when you need it. Know where to go back and get more when you need it. Immerse yourself when that's the right opportunity, and practice. So it's not just have access to it, but it's actually apply it, and then share it. And that's what is going to be a really key function of a great learning platform, learning technology. And then platforms that also can help with driving internal mobility, and that learning is a key indicator to getting people the skills they need to have other opportunities, like I mentioned earlier from our LinkedIn CLO, around finding careers in the same company, not having to move outside. Organizations that leverage technology to be able to provide the resources, the content, traffic, etc., is going to be a huge thing. Go ahead, Becky.
I apologize. Somebody's at my front door just to do that hybrid technology.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to ignore
100%
them,
work from home.
Yes,
as
absolutely.
we see a few.
Yeah. I apologize for the dogs. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, that it's interesting, because you and I have both worked with a lot of different platforms. We've talked to a lot of different vendors. I've even worked for different vendors. We hear the vendor talk about, you can get engagement, and they talk about the Netflix learning. I don't know about you, but I don't consider learning on the job the same as sitting in my recliner watching Netflix. What do you think about that?
That's true. I think it's applying, the learning you're getting. There's definitely some things that are finding access to the tools that help you build knowledge that you didn't know something, but then how do you then go and apply it and put it into practice? It is hard when you're working remotely, if you're especially leading a team remotely and you can't, be face to face to have certain conversations or side by side, walking someone through something or answering questions. But having, providing the right tools at the right time, a lot of those Netflixes or resources, you can have access to maybe are in between when you're actually working on something, and you just need a little nudge, you need a little extra boost. It doesn't matter when you do it, necessarily. It just imagines that you're at the right time based on what you've completed in the past, what you have coming up. Some pre-work, is always helpful before you're going to go and sit into a long session. Employee onboarding comes up a lot as a immersive, way of people learning about the company, about their role, about the organization that they're a part of. How can they find the information they need when they need it and do it on their own time? Because sometimes it's an asynchronous event where you don't have everybody sitting in a training class together. So that's kind of a little my thought on that. Becky, the other things here around workforce readiness is not optional. What would you think about how a great platform shows that?
Yeah, the Great Resignation has certainly challenged that supply chain, which somebody else brought up. People need to be able to find answers. You hear for the past couple of years, we've heard a lot about, Josh Berson's talked about learning in the flow of work, and how can you get a quick answer, which again reinforces that micro learning concept. We don't have time to go take a week's worth of classes, and we certainly don't want to be sitting in a classroom right next to people anymore. So how can we address that workforce readiness and be able to put together what on platforms is called pathways? It's quite different from a curricula, and the idea that you can curate and bring in different content and merge it in together so people can pick the right solutions. It's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the whole concept that you probably hear often as well is learning in the flow of work. So you don't have to stop what you're doing, go sign up for a class, go learn how to do something, or go, Google something, find it, complete it, and consume it. It's how can these platforms help you be ready for what you're working on. Workforce readiness is not an option, and then not optional. And then skills and knowledge that build growth, where a platform that is going to help tie the two together. It's going to help you show not just have you completed learning, but how have you built your skills? How have you grown in your role? How have you grown in the skills that you're trying to develop in? So it's not, a lot of those platforms Becky had talked about earlier around some of the more traditional learning management systems are really good at capturing completion and how many hours have people spent going through certain training events, and I don't know how many classes they registered for. But another way platforms are now evolving is really to highlight that it's not just about completion. The whole cheeks and seats, I think, is a term that comes up often about people being in a classroom or watching a course or clicking through an e-learning module. It's really all about a platform that helps enable building the skills and the knowledge to grow and develop.
Cool. All right. So, I think that brings up, for me at least, that brings up the age-old question of what's in it for me. And it's challenging to think about how do you look at what your business needs, and how do you address learning tech and the investment that you need to make in learning tech to get to what you need to do. And one of the ways that we find that it helps to address some of those things is to think about business examples, business goals and objectives. So, for example, looking at it from 3 different levels at a minimum, from the organization, from the whole company, from individual groups or teams, and then from the employee point of view. So from the organizational point of view, the organization today needs to be agile and respond to new skills and growth, like we've been talking about. Um, so how do you get the organization to be able to respond to that as a business need? For groups and teams, they need to know, the managers and other leaders need to know who can do what, and how can particular individuals on a team, how can they develop their knowledge and competency based on what some of those competencies and knowledges and the talent that you have today. How can you grow your talent today, and meet the needs that you have today in there? Um, and employees today, it is undeniable that employees today are looking at companies that will let them develop, that will let them grow. The expectations for growth and development, are much faster than they have been in the past. And they look to companies that are not just going to let them move up in the organization, but move in all sorts of other directions in the company. And if you have the ability to track that data, if you have the ability to put up knowledge that is focused, easy to get to, and defined, you're going to be able to answer some of those requirements. So those are some very, very simple goals that a digital platform can really help you to achieve. But then it bears the question of which platform makes more sense for you and for your organization. So let's just take a look at that from a standpoint. So I have a little blue pill, red pill here. I don't know how many of you are into the Matrix, but this to me is kind of a blue pill, red pill sort of idea that we have. I find, as we talk to more and more folks, that people still talk about training, and the software that for training is software that manages the content. Excuse me, and it also manages the back end processes that track and allocate content, that allocate resources, and host specific content. It's all about tracking and content and hosting, things like that. That's the management, if you remember the framework that we talked about at the beginning. So that's good. It's worked for us in the past. It's been okay. But now we can do better. Instead of talking about training, we can really talk about learning. And we can also find ways that and systems that enable the type of data analytics that shows how you can tie what you're doing in a learning organization or developing a learning culture, if we get to that nirvana, that we can show how it affects business results. Um, there are business intelligence tools that are built into some of these platforms, that are remarkable. It really helps in all that. And a digital platform, when you compare it to a management platform or a management system, if you will, you find that you get more than just the tracking and the hosting. But now you can really integrate all of your content providers. You can take all of those providers and curate and create content that leaders, managers, influencers, all of those people can do, that is very specific to your environment. So you can go buy a library like LinkedIn Learning or any other content library that's out there that you like. Some really great stuff. But you can focus it, you can develop it, you can layer it in envelopes that create portfolios and all sorts of what's called pathways now instead of curricula. Um, and then on top of that, you have layers, because you're doing all of this with artificial intelligence and other lovely geeky things. You have data on every piece of that. You have data on what people are doing. You have data on how their content is going. You have data on who's creating something, what group is behaving well, what group is talking about things. You have content. So the data analytics that helps you to build those skills and to drive that engagement when you use it, are all there, and it's just a side effect, if you will, of having a modern digital platform. So the question is, what are your needs? Do you want to just manage, or do you want to create a whole learning culture? I mean, obviously it sounds very exciting to create a learning culture, but what's going to be for you? What are going to be the real results that you want to have for adding a platform or any other piece of an ecosystem that drives the engagement, that drives talent mobility, and it also drives an amazing amount of communications up the organization and down the organization from both ends in there.
Becky, thank you for that. I was thinking as you're saying that, and just some of the small businesses that we've worked with, and as we learn some of their opportunities and challenges, and a lot of companies are coming. Again, being small, they maybe have someone who's doing HR. Maybe they do have a person dedicated to more training and learning. But what they're going to find out, what they often come to us and think that they're needing is, we need content. That's what we just need content, or we just need to, we're big enough where we have to have compliance. We need a way to track that. We need to make sure people are, completing so many hours based on a certain, initiative they're pushing out, leadership, or, certain even, CEUs or continuing education units and things. And so, oftentimes a lot of our clients that we work with will find is, there are more solutions out there than ever before, and there's ways of engaging your learners. And because you're small, you don't have the ability to have the heavy administrative burden as maybe some of the more traditional platforms have. You need something that's going to be a little more light, a little easier. It's going to have some content. It's going to have some of the more advanced learner driven kind of crowdsourced kind of aspects to it, and more group-based machine learning and AI and all that good stuff that traditional learning systems don't have, because they were before that time. So when you think about how this really applies to a smaller business, it's really because they don't have the ability to have a team dedicated to administering a platform, updating it, buying a bunch of content, bringing it in, tracking it, sharing it, assigning it. It's really something that's a little bit lighter and easier, that can take some of that cost and time off of their plates.
Yeah, really good points. So that actually leads me to, I just messed that up. Forgive me. There we go. My mouse is a little sensitive. Forgive me. Um, for years, people have thought, and they've heard stories about platforms and what's happened in an enterprise. And the huge changes, and the fact that it takes months to implement it, and gosh, it's a big budget and all that. And yet Todd and I we've worked with organizations that have 300,000 people and implemented a platform with them. And we can tell you that implementing it with, 500, 100, 500, or 1,000 people SMB is even more impactful, because you can really hone what you're looking at. You can really see what's going to affect it. You get, as Todd said earlier, you get those influencers, people who are the COO, the head of different business units, all of those people involved in it, and people listen. The employees listen. It's a much easier rollout. It's a much easier way of getting them involved. It's pretty exciting. We get pretty excited about it anyway, in terms of what they offer. We find that the growth of learning in a small and medium company really offers the development that the employees seek, as well as the communication and social aspect that amplifies the voices of leaders and influencers who are just too busy to do something on their own, and to do something without having some sort of format and structure for all of that. And the creation and curation tools make it really simple for them to do that in there. So let's talk a little bit about what does it take to implement a platform like what we've been talking about. What are the steps to be able to do that in a specific, in a small and medium business? And again, we've done this in a dozen just in the past year. So we have a pretty good set of experiences that we can take a look at and look at the results. First of all, we do address this, at a very 30,000-foot level in terms of 4 different steps. Finding finding the vendors that you want to talk to, talking about who they are, evaluating them and selecting them, and then the actual implementation, which we'll go through what some of those steps are, and then the ongoing governance. As you see on this slide, I've got, a number of days that can take. We have seen this. We had one. Uh, I've forgotten how big. I think there were a couple of hundred people. Um, they actually implemented their system in 30 days. Not going to recommend that for everybody. Um, because there are some pieces that you do want to get ready to go in there, but it was done and it's successful. It's doing great. We had another one that bundled it in with another organizational change that was going on and some other messaging that was going on, and that took as much as 5 months. But Todd, what would you say our average implementation is in a small and medium business?
I'd
How
say
much time?
10 weeks is probably about average, 10 to 12 weeks. So within 3 months, the system's up and going. Some faster, some slower, but we've had a few that are, taking 3 months and others that are taking 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I implemented one enterprise that was really huge, and that took somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 months. So another another advantage that small and medium business have over it all. So let's talk a little bit. Oh, see, there goes that crazy mouse again. Stop touching the mouse, Becky. Let's talk about step 2, evaluating and selecting vendors, because this is an important one. It's so important that I made it pink. Isn't that exciting? So given, again, I was a vendor, I worked with vendors, I managed vendors when I was at Hewlett Packard. This is, of course, an important step in there. You want to, as a part of that, you obviously identify and scrutinize who could be potential vendors. You really want to simplify your RFP. One of the things that we've seen that can take a lot of time is if you do an overly complex RFP and you don't settle on what your goals and objectives are, and you really look at some people have a tendency to put in really elaborate pieces in the RFP. You want to, if you can, get down to 2, if not 3 vendors at the most. And one of my concepts in all of this is references, references, references. Everything you can do to find other companies like yourselves, to find other people who have done something similar, and get references and find people who have looked for something similar. I also am a great advocate of a short proof of concept or pilot, depending upon what you want to call it. And that helps you with, you can do that getting set. You can get your IT stuff all set. You can set up one department. You can see how simple it's going to be and if it's going to be the right solution for you in there. And of course, work with your IT organization in terms of the final solution. Uh, Evaluating vendors, again, means really look at the relationship that you have with the vendor while you're evaluating them. Are they returning your calls? Are they doing something simple? Are they helping you to get to where your goals are? This is, the important pink step, if you will, in there. So,
Can I add real quick to that, Becky? Is just around the kind of RFP process, or as you're looking at what's must have and what's nice to have, try to think, if you're in a small business, don't think of what just because it was the way it was done before or way your last company what approached learning technology, because things have evolved so much since. What you think you need is maybe really just a nice to have, or there may be other ways of getting to the same functionality that may not be the traditional way of automated notifications, for example. Which ones do you really need? Which ones are just kind of nice, and which ones actually kind of just go into the black hole once they're submitted. So, when we are talking to some organizations that like, I really want to make sure that I get the system will email them when they're enrolled in the class 30 days out, 2 days before, an hour before, and then when they're late, they don't get it. And well, if that's required, there may be the case in some situations that is the case. But I'd also say, how much is that actually helping you, have the behaviors you want for the people that are, getting those email communications? They're probably, being blocked at some point or not seeing those. So that's one small example of just something where when you think about in your RFP, and you think about evaluating vendors, is it on the list because it's part of a existing RFP you've seen or used and it's just a traditional functionality, or is it something you really think is a make it or break it for you? This platform doesn't do this, or it can't do that. Make sure you really get very clear on that, because there are ways of doing things that aren't just the normal traditional way. You just have to sometimes think a little bit differently, because some of those that offer all that functionality are going to be extremely expensive and very administratively burdensome. So just thinking kind of do it that way may help you in your selection process.
Yeah, more of that back end stuff as opposed to what people are really looking for. Cool. Yeah. So Todd, can you also talk to us a little bit about what companies can do to prepare for that third step, the implementation?
Definitely. And I think, you'll see here on this little roadmap image, the first piece, that the success, it really starts with defining what does success look like for you. Is success a, percentage of people that are using the system? Is it an indication of, the skills that people are inputting and developing in? Is it a social aspect of the platform? What does success look like for you? And not just for you as maybe an HR or learning professional or a business leader, but what is important for the organization? How do you know that you're investing all this time and money in a solution that it's actually going to make the difference that you're hoping? So, getting very clear with that up front is going to, help you make decisions down the road as to what configurations, what communications, what content, all those different pieces. And then you look at your digital learning strategy. How are people learning now? How do we want to help them learn in the future? Learning and training is often used, interchangeably. And so think about, when we do have a training event, how does that translate into something maybe that's digital? A lot of us, again, we've been part of so many different Zoom or Teams or WebEx events, that are, usually more training by nature because they're one way, and we're kind of listening to that. How does that really help the learning? How does it help your learning strategy? How can you do things, again, a little bit differently with the platform? How can you engage people through a platform for sharing content, commenting on content? Even the whole idea of liking or disliking, content, maybe a video that goes around, and if it's liked or disliked, it can help influencing people's access or completion of it. So, how does that fit into your digital learning strategy and your digital strategy overall? If you're a heavily instructor-led organization and you're trying to, input a platform that's really focused on, on-demand learning resources, micro-learning, you're probably not going to have a big adoption at the first. So thinking about how that could play together. Agile work streams, those who, again, that are going to be, especially in a small business, probably wearing multiple hats, doing lots of different pieces of an implementation. There's maybe somebody who's in the IT that can help them with some single sign-on, or can help them with some integration. But there also may be, one person that's wearing the hat around, the build out of the platform, the configurations, the communication strategy, all the different elements that are part of the implementation. So, agile work streams are going to be important, but the agile work stream could actually mean 1 or 2 people max. So that's something that's going to be important on your journey. And if you have other people you need to bring in to that process, be thoughtful about that early on. The champion network, we've said that a few times, and I bring it up every time I'm talking to any organization that I work with, is you can't be one person to even a company of 100 that's going to have the ability to influence learning across the whole organization. You need other people. You need people to encourage use of the system, people that can help, provide testimonials, people who can show other peers why this is an effective solution. So champions will be very, very crucial in your implementation process as you build out your roadmap. And then finally, marketing. And I think we all can, know if we're in L&D or HR or somewhere around there, that marketing is very different now, and how we can help get people to understand what we're able to provide for them. In a world that things are so, Googled, you can Google everything anytime. That can be an even better need for us to have a more concerted marketing effort, so that we can help guide people to the things we want them to go to, as opposed to, feel like they're on their own to go, complete something that may not be, in line with what we're trying to do. So having a good marketing plan on how do you get engagement, adoption, how do you provide, prove that you're getting a return on this investment you're making, is going to be very important. The next slide, I think you can expand just a little bit on that. So really what we have here is, starting with the selection. Becky really walked us through how do you evaluate the vendors, go through the reference process, the pilot phase. And then as you pilot, the communications, the champions, the groups are very powerful when you think about, we don't learn usually in a silo. We don't always learn by ourselves, by reading an article or watch a video. We're also talking about it. We're also learning from other leaders, learning from other new employees, learning from other, accountants. Groups are very important when you think about, building out a project plan for implementing. What are those that your organization needs? And, groups aren't just functional or aren't just level. They could be an affinity group. Of course, diversity, inclusion, equity, all that is extremely important right now. And so people, organizations that leverage technology to, build groups around those topics. And we also learn from non-professional ways. We also learn, groups that also of people who are learning how to cook, or wellness, or mindfulness. All those different things, are really important, because we learn in a variety of ways. So as you build out, your plan, you get through kind of what you want this to look like, and then you think of a rollout. What is the best kind of rollout for your organization? In some, it is a phased rollout. So you have a pilot, and then you roll, phase it into a couple different, parts of the organization. And it could be, groups of 10 because it's a really small organization, or it could be groups of a couple hundred at a larger small business. However, being very intentional of what that rollout looks like. Others may say, we want everybody to get access day one. We want to flip the switch. We want everyone in there. We want to get a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement. Then we have these targeted kind of follow-ups with these different groups to help, drive the adoption and engagement. With that, you'll see a little, bullet there on content. So content is not static. It's something that needs to be, brought in from various sources, whether it's through a third party that you buy content from, content you create on your own, whether it's a PDF or a PowerPoint, or if it's content others find outside of the platform, and they can bring it into the system and they can share it with the rest of their colleagues. Marketing, you saw that on the roadmap. A big part of this is continuously, keeping it in front of people, whether it's putting on your internet portal, putting on a signature line of your email, driving people back into the platform and helping understand what's available. And then just really, partnering with the business units to make sure that they're getting what they need. IT may have a new content provider they want to bring into the platform. So, being a good consultant and partner for the rest of the organization.
Well, cool. Well, that brings us to the concept of governance. And, obviously, just like with any other piece of software, governance is important. But one of the things that we found is a lot of, be it a small organization or a large organization, having someone who can do the governance, who can actually develop all of the pieces that are a part of that. And the key pieces that I think about when I go through all of this is one example of one of my favorite things to do is to develop a content a calendar of content and events. So an event would be something like whenever you do annual reviews or semi-annual reviews, setting up content for managers and for employees about how to behave, stuff that they need to do, stuff that they need to learn how to coach their employees or how to talk to your manager when you're doing a review, that type of thing. All sorts of calendars of events. At Hewlett Packard, we had a number of, monthly topics that HR and the communications team brought in, and small and medium businesses can be no exception. This is one way that you can really improve the communications within your organization, is to work with all sorts of other organizations and work with them to develop that calendar. I also love to be able to include and develop managers in what's happening, why it's happening, developing people and sharing content. A lot of managers, people that just were really good at their job. They got promoted. Now they need some help in that. So providing them with some of the tools to be more effective. Uh, Critical, as you've heard us sort of, I'm sorry to say this, but this is something I'm accused of, harping on champions. I cannot say enough about how important it is to keep recruiting and encouraging champions, helping them by teaching them to curate, helping them by asking them what are their hot buttons. We have one bank, for example, that's one of our clients, that has a COO who in the past wrote a blog, just a little short blog that she would publish monthly. And it was pretty exciting. It had some really great concepts, and people really loved following her. Gave her a voice and gave her a channel in which she could speak. And it helped to drive engagement, get people on the system, but it also helped for people doing comments. They would curate off of her topics. And it really helped people to learn in line with what the COO wanted to do. Partnering, as Todd just mentioned, the groups that I typically like to partner with is the HR community, what's going on with HR, individual business units, if your company's large enough to have individual business units, making sure that you address each one of those and have groups that have them in there. Whatever you have as a marketing and sales organization, being able to build with them and help them to manage their content. And building all of that in a data so that the leaders can see who they can help and what they can do. So if you talk about also in this, if you talk in the system about internal mobility and provide solutions and address with managers how it's really cool if you have internal mobility as opposed to hoarding talent. This gives you that kind of voice that allows you to build the knowledge of the people that are in your organization. Now, all of this means that in your learning organization, be that one person, or if you're big enough to have a couple of people in a learning organization, there's some new skills and some new ways that they need to behave. Data analytics, learning marketing, what's called experience design. These are new things. So this doesn't mean that by having a platform, you need to hire all these people to do all this governance, because a good platform will make this really simple to do. You have any comments that a story you could add to that one? I know we're getting close on time, Todd, but in terms of governance.
No, I think, almost going back to beginning with the end in mind and success at the beginning is really think through what is your governance. If you're creating a bunch of groups, how are you going to maintain those groups? If you're bringing in content from different places, how are you going to make sure that it's fresh? There are lots of great, templates and things out there. So you don't have to start from scratch to think about how you can design a good governance strategy on a learning platform, whether it's the traditional LMS route or a more a learning experience platform, or if you just use a content provider and those resources. So no specific stories, but just really think through, how can you begin with the governance in mind from the beginning, so you don't have to then spend a lot of time building that out after the fact. I know we just have about 5 minutes or less now, so maybe just hit the last one here, that we can pause for just a few more questions. And nothing's on the chat yet, so we'll just keep going until then.
Think about some questions, folks. I just would like to sort of wrap it up by just talking about from our standpoint, having done this in both large and small organizations, the things that we consider to be our magic that make companies be successful, and that's to adapt the digital mindset with those kind of goals and strategies. Um, Surprise and shock, we're going to talk about champions here. Um, and the other one is provide focused and relevant content. It's a balance. Don't give them too little, they won't come back. Don't give them too much, or you overwhelm them. So focused and relevant. You learn to walk that line. Communicate what you're doing, market it out there, and govern and manage it. So,
Great, thank you. I don't see any
that's a
chat.
fast.
I don't know if there's anybody else who probably imagine you can't come off mute, but if you have anything else you
Yeah.
want to add, ask in the last few minutes, Becky and I will still be here to answer your questions. I think we have on the next slide our contact information. So you saw our name on our slides, and you can reach out to us through LinkedIn, through our emails, through ATD. We're more than happy to answer some questions or give you some of our insights on having done this now for a little while.
And please remember to fill out your evaluation.
Yes.
We love doing this stuff. We would love to keep doing it.
And I hope the conference is going well. I know none of us love the idea of having a virtual conference again, but I know ATD, the technology conference, is always well done. So I hope the rest of you who are out there can enjoy it and get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you. I'll just kind of go on mute until we see anything, and then the last couple of minutes, please make sure you do the eval. We want to get better at these, and want to make sure that we provide you the right information at the right time.
Okay. Just looking to see anything new in there in the chat. Oh.
Question. One company just provide references their most satisfied customers. Yeah, their whole bias.
Yes.
That comes up sometimes as well. Yes, that they'll
Yes.
just give you the names of those who they like. So then ask around, ask your network, ask other people who've known the platform, not just who the vendor will recommend to you.
The other one of the things that I found has been a little helpful is I'm hoping there's no vendors on this, but often vendors will list their customers on their website. And sometimes those people are not still customers. So look for people that are in the same business as you are. I think there's organizations, there's good chat on the ATD website. That's always a good place to go to find people that are also in the same organization. Or I have to put my little plug in here and say, look for organizations like ours that specialize in SMBs. I think, there's so many solutions that are out there. You're doing one of the things that I think is critical, and that's going to these conferences and talking to vendors and getting to see who you feel good about. One story I can give you: when I was at HP and I was in charge of learning all the learning vendors, we did an RFP, and we got it down to 3 vendors, and then one of the vendors called me up to talk trash about the other vendors. And it was pretty tacky, and it wasn't acting like what I wanted them to act like, which is a partner. And there were a couple of other reasons why we weren't totally excited about them, but basically we eliminated them from that kind of behavior. Look for someone that you want to be a partner with.
Yeah. I know right at time, and I just put a message back in the question that Brandon asked around favorite top 2 or 3 pieces of technology. I added social and mobile. Those who really focus on that are the ones I get a lot out of, just because that's the way I learn all the time, anywhere, and from others, not just articles and videos. So hopefully that helped. Thank you for your questions. I appreciate your time, everyone. I know you're moving to the next session, or maybe you're getting a quick break. So we're grateful for the time and the time you spent with us. Don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.